They cuffed her like a criminal, hands behind her back, eyes forward, no name on the paperwork. But she didn't resist. Just scanned the courtroom like it was a battlefield she'd survived before. Then the doors slammed open, and a Navy admiral saluted her. So who exactly did they arrest, and what truth was so dangerous it had to be erased with silence? No badge, no ID. Just a black woman with weathered skin and eyes that moved like radar, picking apart distances while her rifle whispered truths no one else could see. The shooting range was a forgotten spot off the cliffs of Coldwatch, Maine. Pine air, sharp with salt, fog still clinging to steel targets half visible through the mist. Locals came here to prove things. She came to remember. She looked maybe 60, small, solid build. Baseball cap pulled low, hair braided back tight, like she had to keep everything controlled, even grief. She took lane 8, the farthest one. The one with the warped bench and rusted wind flags, like she wanted the disadvantage. Frank Lorne, the range officer, watched from inside his booth, coffee in one hand, old instincts in the other. Navy vet, 30 years back. Now he taught tourists to load bolt actions without losing thumbs. The woman didn't fit any box he knew. Her gear wasn't flashy. No brand-name optics, no customized paint jobs. But her fingers moved over her rifle like a surgeon threading through memory. No wasted movement, no second-guessing. Just breath, count, fire. By the 4th shot, she had his full attention. First target, 300 yards, dead center. Second, 600, center again. Third, 1,100 yards, wind shear, uphill, still center. Frank narrowed his eyes. That shot wasn't just impossible for the gun she was using. It was offensive. A guy 2 lanes over noticed, nervous, maybe jealous. He muttered something, packed up, and walked out. 10 minutes later, police pulled in. Frank didn't call them. 2 officers stepped out, one younger, jittery, the other older and smug. Both white, both already sure they were right. Hands near holsters. "Ma'am," the older one said, "we need to see ID and your firearms permit." The woman looked up, calm. "I don't carry either when I'm not supposed to exist." They didn't like that. No wallet, no license, no phone. Just a notebook full of odd numbers and a key card without markings. They cuffed her without reading charges. She didn't resist. Just looked past them, toward the tree line, the hills beyond, the sky, as if measuring. At the Coastal County Sheriff's Office, she sat through processing like stone. No name, no answers, no defense. Even when they told her refusing to identify herself was a crime, she just held their gaze like she'd seen worse men with better words. Wells, the detective, tried everything. Friendly tone, federal threats, long silences meant to crack people open. She stayed closed. He joked with a deputy. "Maybe she's a Russian asset." The woman finally spoke. "That scar you're watching, it's not Russian. It's American. And earned." They went quiet after that. Fingerprint scan, nothing. Photo check, nothing. She wasn't in any system, not local, not state, not federal. But her presence felt military. Even now, sitting in that cheap chair under flickering lights, she sat upright. Not proud, just prepared. Wells noticed something else too. When no one was looking, she studied. The hallway angles, the camera blind spots, the rhythm of guard footsteps. Like she was still in a war no one else saw. That night, she was transferred to holding. Her cell was bare, just bars, cold air, and questions. She slept like someone who had no use for dreams. And across town, inside a courtroom older than most maps, a docket was printed with no name. Just, unknown black female, age 60s. A routine arraignment scheduled for morning. Nobody knew what was coming through those courtroom doors. But she did. And she was already counting the seconds. The courtroom smelled like old wood and fear. People filled the benches, locals whispering, reporters from Portland scribbling, 2 men in dark suits watching everything without blinking. Judge Marianne Halloway scanned the docket with practiced irritation. Another no-name arrest. No ID, no backstory. Just, black female, elderly, unknown threat. Her sigh was almost theatrical. "Let's move this along." The woman sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit too large for her frame, wrists still cuffed, eyes still unreadable. Her court-appointed lawyer looked like he'd just lost a bet. He didn't even try to hide his frustration. "Your Honor," he began, "I'm requesting a continuance. My client refuses to speak, and I haven't been able to prepare a defense." Before the judge could respond, the man in the first row stood. Clean suit, Homeland Security badge. "We're requesting immediate transfer to federal custody," he said. "Possible threat to national infrastructure." Another man stood behind him. "FBI also asserts jurisdiction, potential ties to an ongoing counter-intel op." The judge slapped her gavel. "This is still my courtroom. Sit down." The clerk read the charges like reading the weather. Possession of unregistered weapons, refusal to comply with identification laws, suspected terror affiliation. The woman didn't react. Not a blink, not a twitch. She just sat like she was made of something older than stone. Detective Wells watched from the gallery, his curiosity clawing deeper now. She didn't match any profile. Not extremist, not unstable, not scared. She had the silence of someone who'd learned how to wear stillness like armor. "How does the defendant plead?" the judge asked. Before the lawyer could even rise, the doors swung open. They didn't creak, they boomed, and in walked something no one expected. A Navy admiral in full dress uniform, flanked by 2 officers. Medals shimmered under fluorescent lights like quiet thunder. Every veteran in the room stood without being told. Even the judge leaned back slightly, suddenly smaller behind the bench. The admiral said nothing as he approached, just handed a sealed envelope to the bailiff. It was thick, stamped with red markings, the kind that says, "Don't ask." Judge Holloway read the first line. Her jaw set, her brows rose, then the paper trembled just slightly in her hand. When she looked up again, her voice had changed. "In light of this classified documentation provided by the Department of Defense," she said, "all charges are dismissed, immediately." The room gasped like it forgot how breath worked. "This case is now under national security classification. It is sealed. It is done." She slammed her gavel. The sound rang out like a shot. The admiral turned toward the woman. "Commander," he said, and even the word felt like a wound tearing open in the room, "we apologize for the inconvenience." Every military person present stood straighter. One saluted. The bailiff uncuffed her slowly, like he'd realized he was unlocking a weapon, not a person. She stood, finally, not hunched, not defensive, but tall, shoulders square, chin level. The transformation was terrifying in its grace. That's when Wells realized it wasn't defiance she carried. It was discipline, not arrogance, legacy. Judge Holloway, a former Navy JAG herself, nodded once to the woman. Not as a judge, as a soldier. Outside news crews lunged, reporters shouted, flashbulbs flared. She ignored them all. In silence, she walked beside the admiral toward a waiting black SUV. No chains, no cuffs, no name tag. Just her. Sheriff Brandt followed, his voice wobbling with confusion. "Admiral, with all due respect, we were treating her like a threat to the public." The admiral gave him a long look. "She was protecting the public. From things you'll never hear about." Detective Wells caught up, breath short. "Commander, I owe you an apology." She finally looked at him. Not past him. At him. "No need," she said. "You were doing your job, and I did mine." Then she got in the vehicle and shut the door. But the silence she left behind had weight. It said, "You don't need to know who I am. You just need to know I was always here. And you never saw me." The vehicle turned away from the courthouse, black windows swallowing the sun. Inside, Commander Hayes sat in silence beside Admiral Rourke. She hadn't changed out of the jumpsuit yet. It didn't matter. Uniform or not, she carried herself like someone who'd never stopped serving. "Washington's expecting your debrief within the hour," Rourke said. "Silent Harbor was a success, but you'll need to clarify your disappearance." Hayes didn't look at him. There's a price for staying invisible. This was just interest coming due. He nodded once, quietly. By the time they reached the Navy field office, she'd already reassembled her quiet. The silence of someone who'd buried friends under flags and missions under concrete. Her civilian clothes were waiting. Dark jeans, combat boots, and a jacket she'd worn through 4 continents and too many compromises. She checked her equipment with the precision of a surgeon. Each piece returned, untouched, except for one. Her rifle. The old one. The one with the burn scar under the grip and the name etched in the bolt. Jules. Rourke noticed. You kept it all these years. It kept me, she replied. As she stepped into the hall, she saw him. Wells. The detective who once handcuffed her now stood straighter, in a pressed NCIS jacket. Confused. Uncertain. You followed me, she asked. No, he said. They, offered me a position. And you accepted? I didn't understand it then, he said carefully. But I do now. Hayes tilted her head. Understanding isn't always required, just action. Down the corridor, an older vet approached slowly. A Vietnam pin on his collar, prosthetic on his left leg. Ma'am, I saw you testify once in D.C. back in 2008. Medal of Valor ceremony. You wore the same calm you do now. Hayes smiled slightly. That wasn't testimony. That was silence, given a podium. He laughed once. That's why we all remembered it. The debrief room was bare. 1 chair, 1 camera, 1 recorder. Hayes sat down, folded her hands, and gave her report the way she gave everything. Sharp, precise, minimal. Silent Harbor had targeted a coastal network smuggling encrypted data to hostile foreign actors. Hayes had been undercover for nearly a year. No backup, no name, no safety net. They taught me how to disappear, she said to the camera. But no one taught them what it meant when a black woman did. She recounted names, places, clearances, code names, kills every line said without bravado, just history. When the tape ended, Admiral Rourke entered again, his voice lower now. The incident at the range, the arrest. If you'd said anything, we could have intervened sooner. Hayes looked up, her gaze steady. I needed to see how far they'd go, she said. Rourke blinked. Why? She didn't blink back. Because it always goes farther when you look like me. Silence stretched. She stood. Let the brass write their apologies. Let the sheriff lose sleep. I didn't do this to prove anything. I did it to finish the work. But I won't pretend it didn't burn. Outside, the fog was lifting off the harbor. Seagulls screamed into the wind. She watched the coast, the ships, the cranes, the slow pulse of guarded peace. And somewhere beneath it all, she knew another fire was coming. But not yet. First, she needed her rifle back. Frank heard her before he saw her. The sound of boots on gravel. Heavy, familiar. The kind that carried weight deeper than bone. He opened the door to the range before she could knock. Didn't expect to see you back this soon, he said. It's been 9 months, she replied. And yet it feels like yesterday. She looked older in the sunlight. Not tired, just sharpened. Frank handed her a case. I kept it locked up tight, he said. She opened it, checked the contents, ran her hand across the bolt, the burn scar. Still shoots true, he added. So do I, she replied. Without another word, she walked to lane 8. Same as before. Same wind, same impossible distance. Different weight behind the trigger. Frank watched from the booth as she assembled the rifle. No hesitation. No wasted movement. Just that same disciplined rhythm. Click, lock, breath. Her fingers were slower now, joints stiffer, but the precision had deepened. Every adjustment was a memory made mechanical. She took the shot without a scope. Wind, distance, dusk. Bullseye. Frank didn't cheer. He just nodded, eyes narrowed in quiet awe. You're not supposed to be able to do that, he muttered. She was already breaking the rifle back down. Why come back here? He asked. Hayes didn't answer at first. She packed each part with a care that looked sacred. Because here, she said finally, they let me shoot without question. They don't ask if I belong. Frank's throat tightened. Not with guilt. With knowing. You want coffee? He asked gently. She nodded once. Inside, he poured 2 mugs, both chipped at the lip. The office hadn't changed since 2008. Neither had the smell: coffee, oil, gunpowder, pine. "You know," he said, handing her a cup, "you scared the hell out of that sheriff. He still won't talk about it." "He shouldn't," she said. Frank sipped. "What would have happened if that Admiral hadn't come?" She looked at him. "I'd still be in a cell," she said, voice even. "Or worse. You think the world sees an old black woman with a sniper's eye and says, 'Hero'?" He looked down. "No," he said. "I think it sees threat first, truth later." She didn't reply. Didn't need to. Because he was right. Wells arrived that afternoon. Different clothes, same eyes, wide with questions he was still trying to understand. "You're hard to find," he said. "I'm not hiding," she answered. "You're just not looking the right way." He exhaled sharply, almost a laugh. "You know, they're training people now based on you. Protocols, warning signs, recognition systems." "And yet," she said softly, "it still took a white man with a 4-star uniform to unlock my cuffs." That silenced him. "I don't say that to shame you," she added. "I say it because one day, you'll be the one standing between someone like me and someone like them. And you'll have to choose." Wells nodded slowly. "I hope I choose right." "You won't know until it costs you something." He watched her for a long moment. Then, carefully, he reached into his coat pocket and handed her something. A folded paper. "What's this?" she asked. "A note from someone who never got to thank you," he said. "An intelligence analyst in D.C. black woman. She tracked your work for 5 years. Called you the reason she joined." Hayes unfolded the page. Just one line. "They told me I'd never belong. Then I read about you." Hayes held it like it was glass. Fragile, precious. Then tucked it into her inside pocket. "You didn't have to bring this," she said. "I did," he replied. "Because for a long time, people like me told stories about people like you, and we got them wrong." Outside, the air shifted. The sun dipped low. 3 unmarked SUVs rolled up in formation. Rourke stepped out first, trailed by agents dressed like electricians, and teachers, and museum docents. People you'd never suspect until they moved like they didn't want you to see the truth. "This is your team?" Frank asked quietly. "No," Hayes said. "They're just pieces on the board." She turned toward the Admiral. "We're live?" she asked. He nodded. "Confirmed signal from the port. They're moving in 48 hours. Then we start tonight." Wells looked over the map Rourke handed him. "Residential zones, shopping corridors. You can't go in loud." "We won't," Hayes said. "That's why we need you." "Why me?" "Because they'll trust your badge more than my face." It wasn't an accusation. It was a fact. Wells looked down at his hands, hands that once cuffed her, now hands that would carry her orders. And he knew. This wasn't redemption. It was a reckoning. They moved like wind, quiet, everywhere, never seen. By morning, Frank's range looked nothing like itself. Cable trucks with fake logos, charts pinned over corkboards, radios crackling in clipped phrases. The firing lanes had become staging bays, and at the center of it all, Hayes, calm as dusk. Wells watched from a corner, the only one not in tactical gear. "This feels illegal," he muttered. "It's not illegal," said Rourke. "It's inconvenient. That's different." Hayes stood over the table, eyes scanning satellite feeds, thermal overlays, municipal blueprints. Her voice was steady, her fingers silent as it tapped out timing on a laminated map. "We've got 3 locations," she said. "Only one's real. The others are distractions. That's how they move. Shadows within shadows. They assume we'll act like bulls. We won't." She pointed at a warehouse. "This one's fake. Heat signatures show staged movement. Military formation patterns too clean." Rourke raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "I've been hunted," Hayes said. "I know how decoys breathe." Wells shifted closer, glancing at the 3rd location, a shipping container behind a condemned fishery. No lights, no guards. Just quiet. Too quiet. "That one?" he asked. Hayes didn't respond. She looked up, eyes narrowing. Send a drone, infrared only. 2 minutes later, the screen flared. 8 heat signatures, motionless, no gear movement, no exits. A trap. Dead sight, Hayes said. Possibly rigged to blow. That left one. A crumbling bait and tackle shop by the marina. No motion, no signals, no digital footprint. Too dead to be normal. Civilians nearby, Wells warned. We can't afford casualties. That's why we go soft entry, Hayes said. Rourke spoke quietly. Who leads the stack? Hayes didn't hesitate. I do. No one challenged her, not because she outranked them, because she outlived every argument. As night fell, the gear came out. Light armor, non-lethal kits, suppressed sidearms. They moved in pairs, each shadow melting into another. Hayes walked with Wells, steps light, breath measured. You sure you're good for this? He asked. You're not exactly young, she finished. Number I'm not, but I don't miss. That hasn't aged. They reached the building. It smelled of rust and salt and something rotten underneath. A locked freezer door at the back, welded shut, covered in dust. Wells raised his hand. Let me breach. But Hayes was already moving, knife out, fingers on seams. A moment later, the door gave with a sigh. Inside, a hidden room. Radio equipment, a satellite uplink, bags of ammonium nitrate. Enough to flatten 6 blocks. And one man, just one, sitting behind a laptop, eyes wide. He wasn't armed. He didn't try to run, just stared at Hayes like he'd seen a ghost he never expected to meet in combat boots. You? He whispered. They said you were dead. Hayes didn't flinch. Not yet, she said. Then, Wells? He stepped forward and cuffed the man without a word. Outside, backup arrived. The room filled with suits, agents, analysts. Cameras were dismantled, drives collected, no headlines, no names, mission accomplished, crisis averted, and no one would ever know who led it. Later, back at the range, the team began to disband. Frank handed her a sealed envelope. What's this? She asked. It arrived the day before you came. I didn't open it. She tore the seal. Inside was a single photo, black and white, old, almost faded. A group of women in military fatigues, standing on a cliff. One of them, unmistakably, was her. Younger, angry, still believing service would make her visible. On the back, they tried to erase us. You never let them. Hayes folded it gently, then turned to leave. Going already? Frank asked. She didn't turn. There's still work. He stepped forward. You ever think you'd be remembered like this? She paused, then looked back. No, she said. But I always knew we'd be needed. 6 weeks later, the sea was calm again. But the story of what happened never made the papers. No suspects named, no medals awarded. Just a paragraph in a federal memo that ended with, Operation neutralized without civilian awareness. Frank stood at the range early, thermos in hand, breath curling in the crisp wind. He checked the targets, adjusted the flags. Routine, quiet. Until he noticed a figure already standing at lane 8. Not Hayes. Younger, maybe 22. Brown skin, soft eyes, military boots too new to belong to someone that precise. Frank watched her shoot. Wind adjustment, same exact touch, foot spacing, exact down to the inch. He walked up casually. Nice shooting. She nodded. Thanks. College team? Something like that. He didn't press, just nodded and walked away, phone already in hand. He dialed a number that wasn't listed anywhere. Not anymore. A voice answered. Verification phrase. Blue water, still horizon pause. Then, go ahead. I just met someone, Frank said. Same rhythms, same shadow. The voice asked. Assessment? She's not ready, but she's real. Noted. 3 days later, the girl returned, this time with someone else. Older, sharp posture, hidden authority. As they packed up, the man approached Frank. Mr. Lorne, he said, using a name Frank hadn't introduced. Frank didn't flinch. I figured you'd come. She's under observation, the man said. Your eyes still sharp. Frank nodded. Always watching. The man handed him a card. No name, just an embossed seal and one number. If you ever want to train observers formally, there's space. Frank didn't answer. Just pocketed the card like he had the last one. That night, alone in his cabin, he poured a small drink and sat at his window overlooking the bay. Wind howled through the pine trees. The moon rippled silver across the surface of the water. A memory drifted forward. The last time Hayes came through. She hadn't said goodbye. Just left a note. Tucked in the case with her rifle. Some of us are always around. You just don't see us unless you're looking. He hadn't touched her lane since. Meanwhile, in Washington, Wells sat across from a high-clearance review board. Operation Shadow Arc was being launched, the first of its kind. A joint task force blending law enforcement and special ops, aimed at intercepting domestic threats before they surfaced. Wells would lead it. Not because he was the best tactician, but because he once arrested a woman the system failed to recognize, and changed because of it. As the meeting ended, he received a sealed folder. Black, with a single word embossed on it. Silent Harbor 2. He opened it on the elevator down. First page, Commander Hayes' signature. Second page, Mission Directive, signed 6 days prior. Third page, a small line scribbled in pen. You'll never see all of us, but we'll know if you're watching right. Wells smiled slightly. She was still in the wind. On a different coast, far from Maine, a sniper took position high above a canyon. Wind sharp against her cheek. Jawline older now, shoulders wrapped in sun-faded canvas. Finger resting soft on the trigger, heartbeat sinking with breath. She didn't need applause, didn't need justice. She just needed a clean line of sight. The radio crackled. Target moving. Stand by. She locked in. A crow landed on a branch beside her, watched her stillness like it understood. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't miss. Back in Maine, Frank found a box outside the range office. No name, no note. Inside, a brand new spotting scope, military grade. Attached, a note. Just 3 words. Keep watching, Frank. He looked up at the sky, lips pressed into a quiet smile. The world would keep forgetting women like Hayes, but not here. Not anymore. Because she'd taught him what to look for, and he'd never unsee it again.